Welcome to Rails, Ales, and Old Towns. Well, I hope you're in the mood for some festive cheer, because this episode is a special holiday edition, one that transports us straight to the heart of Christmas in Germany. My guest is Wolfgang Gärtner, head of international marketing at Saxony Tourism, and he joins me to talk about why Saxony, especially the city of Dresden and the towns and villages of the Ore Mountains, can lay claim to being the German capital of Christmas. Now, since there's something special about sipping a mug of mulled wine under twinkling lights on a cold night, we chat about Saxon Christmas markets, including one that's been going strong for nearly 600 years. But Wolfgang also tells us about the centuries-old traditions behind the region's famed wooden toys, candle arches, nutcrackers, pyramids, and festive foods, many of which have gone on to become holiday traditions around the world. Along the way, you'll hear about some great places to eat and a cool neighborhood in Dresden, a beautiful border town that might just be one of Germany's best kept secrets, and why, in these parts, mining is so deeply connected to the holiday season. Well, it looks like it's just about to snow, so let's go to Saxony.
What is the gap between a train and a platform?
Let's welcome to Rails, Ales, and Old Towns, Wolfgang Gärtner, head of international marketing at Saxony Tourism. Wolfgang, welcome.
Thank you, Scott. I'm very pleased to be your guest.
Yes, and you're right. You're in the Christmas spirit, right?
Yeah, always.
I guess if you're at Saxony Tourism, you've always got to be in the Christmas spirit.
It's definitely always part of it. Yeah, they're absolutely right.
I guess before we get into all the great, seasonal delights and Christmas magic of Saxony, just if you don't mind, if you could just give like a quick overview to someone about like where Saxony is in Germany, maybe a little bit of the history, if you don't mind.
Yeah, Saxony is one of the 16 states of Germany. It has a history of around 1100 years. Basically, the German rulers expanded into the east. They founded a region that was originally called Meissen. Yeah, because in the town of Meissen, famous for the Meissen porcelain, that's where the German rule was established. And for the first 500 years, then the region was also known as Meissen. But later we adopted the name Saxony, which comes from a tribe which lived in northern Germany. So I always say, to make it easy, our state is in the middle between Berlin and Prague. People tend to know our large cities better sometimes than the name of the state, and the capital is Dresden, which is of course well known, and Leipzig is the largest city. And Dresden is about 2 hours south of Berlin and 1.5 hours north of Prague. We had a very continuous history because we were ruled by one family for 829 years until we became a republic in 1918. We got rich very early in the 12th century when they found silver in what is called today the Ore Mountains, the mountainous regions in the south of Saxony, which is now also a UNESCO World Heritage Site because it has been shaped by mining for all these hundreds of years. From then on, there was always good fortune in Saxony. Saxony got rich again in the times of the industrialization because they could very easily adapt to this because they had a lot of technical experience from the mining. So people had a good technical understanding, and so the Industrial Revolution wasn't very problematic. And Saxony developed a very diverse industry with a lot of world market leaders. And so Saxony, until World War II, was also the richest part of Germany. And before the war, everybody would have visited Saxony because Dresden was considered one of the most beautiful cities in the world. Leipzig was the center of world trade, and Chemnitz, our third largest city, had the highest industrial output in Germany. It's the cradle of German engineering, where the first machines were built, and followed by Dresden, which was the second most important industrial city in Germany. But we had the misfortune of falling behind the Iron Curtain, and then people simply forgot about everything that we have.
Well, we're going to hopefully change that. But yeah, that's yeah, and we just have to say off the top, like Dresden, when you approach Dresden and you see the city spread out and the Elbe River between it, I mean, it is one of the most beautiful cityscapes in Europe.
Yeah, especially with the famous skyline, which was all reconstructed after the war. And in fact, the reconstruction process is now about coming to an end. I would say about half of the old town has been reconstructed, and the last buildings are under construction now. And also the Royal Palace, which has been rebuilt for 40 years, will be completed by 2027.
Well, that's something to look forward to. And I mean, the meticulous way that people have rebuilt things, I mean, that's just remarkable in its own right.
I completely agree. On one hand, of course, the communists tried to turn Dresden into a socialist style city, but since they didn't have the resources to carry out all the projects, there was a lot of things that could be done after German reunification. And even before that, there was a bit of a change of heart in the communist times because they realized that there is no future without the past. That's why they, for example, rebuilt the Semper Opera House, which was a massive project for them. And after they finished that in 1986, they turned their attention to the Royal Palace that I just mentioned. So even the palace would have been rebuilt, but of course not named a palace, but a museum for the state art collections in Dresden, which are amongst the best in the world.
How did this region become so enwrapped in Christmas? And I'm going to use the phrase the capital of German Christmas. That's not, you didn't say that, so no one else in Germany can get mad at you, but I'm saying it. Saxony is the capital of German Christmas.
How did that happen? That's a very good question. I think there were different developments. And by the way, don't worry, I also call it the land of Christmas. Yeah, because
Okay.
I think nobody can compete in this field. Of course, Christmas tends to be very focused on Christmas markets. That's not all, of course. Saxony has much more to offer. Of course, speaking of Christmas market, Dresden has the oldest Christmas market in Germany, the so-called Striezelmarkt. The name Striezelmarkt comes from, I would say, the predecessor of today's Stollen, the famous German Christmas cake, which is only original if it's from Dresden. What happened? The original Striezel was a very dry affair. It was a cake made basically just from flour, oil, and water. Because in the early days, Christmas was a time of Lent, so you couldn't use a lot of things. And of course, nobody enjoyed this very dry cake. So the Saxon rulers petitioned the Pope to allow people to add butter to this cake. And they tried for a long time. They finally succeeded. I mean, you had, of course, to bribe the Pope, yeah, to get what you wanted. And but eventually they made it happen. There was a deal struck, kind of, and there's a famous so-called butter letter. Yeah, that's still in the archives, where the Pope then allowed the Dresdeners to add butter to this cake. And then, they, of course, they went overboard and added all the other ingredients to it, like the raisins and fruit and whatever makes the Stollen so tasty and so heavy these days. There's a protective association which protects the name Dresden Stollen or Stollen Dresden style. You can't make that anywhere else in the world and call it like that. And there's also the Stollen Festival, which is part of the Striezelmarkt, where they have a gigantic Stollen, which they parade through the streets of the city. It's created by all the Stollen bakers, which are part of the association. And then it's cut into pieces and sold for charity. And that goes back basically a huge festivity, probably the biggest in the Baroque age, which took place in the year 1730 when our ruler at the time, Augustus the Strong, decided to do a parade of his newly reformed troops, but he used that basically as an excuse for a large festivity, and part of that was a gigantic Stollen for which they built an oven, and the people loved it and took even pieces home. Although from today's view, with the technology at that time, probably it wasn't even properly baked. Yeah, but it goes back to that tradition. So the Christmas market is one element there, and so it became, of course, also kind of important very early on.
But yeah, that was one of the things I wanted to talk to you about was because, you know, when a lot of people think of Germany, we think of Christmas markets, of course, but in Saxony, you've got the Christmas markets, but you've also got these other things that we're going to talk about that just things that are in the background of Christmas to everyone around the world that are from Saxony too. We've talked about the Stollen, and then just to follow up that, so the name of the market, is that what Stollen used to be called? Striezel?
Yeah, the Striezel was kind of this dry version that they had in the past. And of course, with the ingredients changed, the name also changed to Stollen. You can even do Stollen baking classes before Christmas.
In Dresden.
Yes, with some of the bakeries, which is a lot of fun, of course.
So obviously, that's the big market. That's the one that's famous, and that's in the middle of the town there. You've got the huge wooden candle arch, great Christmas market. But there are multiple Christmas markets in Dresden.
Yes, there are about 10 Christmas markets in Dresden, and in total about 130 in Saxony.
Any favorites of yours in Dresden besides the main one? Because I'll tell you, when I was there, I really, really enjoyed the one that was over by the Church of Our Lady.
Yes, of course, the three big ones I would say are the Striezelmarkt itself, then the one around the Church of Our Lady of Frauenkirche, which is in the style of around 1900 and looks charming. And the third one, of course, that is very much appreciated is the medieval Christmas market, which takes place in the stable yard of the royal palace. A lot of people love this one. It's also one of the markets which carry on after Christmas under a new name. Because, very strong tradition in Germany that Christmas markets have to end before Christmas. And for tourists, that's sometimes strange because they come at Christmas or after Christmas and wonder why there's no Christmas market. But traditionally, it ends, the Striezelmarkt for sure, ends on the 24th at lunchtime. Then it's over. But this medieval market carries on. But there's also small Christmas market. Dresden expanded a lot in the 19th century and kind of overgrew a lot of villages. But the little farmhouses that were in the villages are often still around. Yeah, they're surrounded now by thousands of villas from the 19th century. And one of them is Loschwitz, not very far from the city center, and in front of a row of these beautiful little half-timbered houses, which used to be little farmhouses, there's a tiny Christmas market with a focus on art.
You're getting me too excited about Christmas here with these timber frame houses and the market and all that. But that's only a taste of what's to come. But okay, so people who are coming to Dresden, just remember, don't only focus on the main one. Make sure you get out and experience all the other ones. And at the main Christmas market, what I love about Dresden too is it seems like every day there's an event going on.
Yes, there's a lot of traditional events. There's a lot of music involved also, yeah, because Dresden has a great musical history and famous orchestra with the Staatskapelle or Saxon State Orchestra, which is one of the oldest in the world, or the boys' choir of the Church of the Holy Cross, which is also many hundreds years old. And of course, everybody performs at Christmas time.
So if you're in Dresden, you're spending a few nights there, you've bounced around the Christmas markets, any recommendation for like a cozy restaurant, like someone, because my wife and I have done trips where we've done like 2 weeks straight of Christmas markets, and there's sometimes you're like, tonight I might not just want a sausage and glühwein for dinner.
I can perfectly understand that. I have to make a confession. I'm not a big fan of Christmas markets.
Okay,
The reason
that
is
was
very
really nice talking to you, and I appreciate it.
No, the reason is that they're of course always very crowded. So one thing is of course try to avoid the weekends when all the Germans also come and want to visit the Striezelmarkt in particular. Yeah, and food and drink are all very well. Once a year you want to have your mulled wine and sausage and you name it, like you said. You can't make a living on that in the end, and you want to have something else. So I perfectly understand that. Well, I can recommend a few places that I think are cozy in Dresden. My favorite restaurant is called Alte Meister, which means old masters. And it's in a former artist's workshop on the side of the Old Masters Picture Gallery, which is one of the best in the world. And it's a small restaurant, so they have limited space and they always make kind of fresh seasonal food. And they're particularly good, in my opinion, with meat dishes. And you can have delicious food which is very good value for money. It could be a very expensive restaurant, but it's still quite affordable. Another thing that I like is we spoke of the Royal Palace. For 3 years or so, there has been a restaurant in the Royal Palace as well. It's called Anna. And Anna was the wife of one of our rulers. That was Elector Augustus. He was married to a Danish princess called Anna, so it's named in her honor. And it is in the oldest part of the palace, so in vaulted rooms. In summer, you can beautifully sit outside in the large palace yard where the sgraffito decorations have been recreated. It's quite impressive, and they have. They call it German Austrian cuisine. So if you want a good schnitzel, for example, Vienna style, yeah, with veal, then you can have it there. But of course, they have also all kinds of other things, and it's just a nice atmosphere sitting either outside or inside this restaurant. Another place I like a lot is the Kosel Palais or Little Kosel Palace. Yeah, Palais is like a small palace, which is kind of behind the Church of Our Lady.
Okay.
It was actually the first building to be rebuilt in this area. And again, it has a beautiful U-shaped yard outside in summer, but in winter you can sit inside. And it has a kind of like a very historic atmosphere and serves good food and also the best cake in town. And last but not least, under the Kosel Palace, there's another restaurant. Because when they rebuilt it, under the ruins, basically, they found the remains of an old gunpowder tower, which used to stand there until it exploded, like gunpowder towers did once
It
in a while.
happens. It does
Yeah,
happen.
that did happen, yeah. And so they found basically the foundations of it and decided to kind of build a restaurant around it. In Christmas times, they really decorate it fully for Christmas, almost over the top, yeah.
Okay.
And they have hearty, not only hearty food, traditional German and Saxon food, but they also have entertainment like musicians, people who do card tricks for you, magicians.
Okay, I mean, you can't go wrong with magicians and card tricks. One thing I wanted to ask you about before we move on out of Dresden is you can hang out in somewhere called the Outer Newtown, right?
Yes,
Now, even if you're not cool, they'll let you in, right?
they let you in, of course. They're very tolerant. Yeah, the outer New Town. There's the old town, of course, where you have all these historic buildings like the Royal Palace, the Zwinger, or the Semper Opera House. And you mentioned the Elbe River, which, of course, flows through Dresden on a length of 20 miles, 30 kilometers. So on the other side of the river is the New Town, which is a confusing name because it was actually an older part. It used to be called Alten Dresden, so Old Dresden, but then this Alten Dresden burned down in the 17th century. Then our most splendid ruler, Augustus the Strong, decided to rebuild it as a planned new city of Baroque, and it got the name the New Royal Town near Dresden, which of course is way too long, and people shortened it just to New Town. But that's the inner New Town. And then in the 19th century, when Dresden started exploding through the industrialization, they added another new town to the new town, the outer new town, an expansion basically of the new town. And that's the area that is now where the trendy places are. Yeah, there's entertainment, bars, restaurants. A lot of young people live there, or at least go there, because it has become so fashionable. But there's also a lot of families who live there, and everybody who wants to be a little different.
It's always nice
That-
to get that mix when you go places. See the tourist center, see the old town, see the new areas, and see those emerging, cool spots where the kids are hanging out.
There's also a very famous site in this new town. It's called Fun's Molkerei, Fun's Dairy. I don't know if you had a chance to see it. The most beautiful milk store in the world, according to the Guinness Book of World Records.
I think I know this place. I didn't make it there, but this is the place that was featured in the Grand Budapest Hotel movie.
Yes. And it has an interesting story. I give you a very short version of it. In the 19th century, it was very dangerous to drink milk in the city because the milk had to be transported from the countryside into the city, and they didn't have refrigeration. Obviously, they used open containers for transporting milk, which doesn't make it very healthy, and they used the same containers to carry out garbage from the city to the countryside. So it was really literally dangerous to drink milk. And Mr. Fund had an idea. He was a farmer and he decided to bring the cows to the city. So if you go to the shop, which is beautifully decked out with Villeroy and Boch tiles, because Villeroy and Boch used to have its largest factory in Dresden, there was the shop in the front, and behind it were the stables. There you
Wow.
can still see that at the back. There's a huge kind of window, and from there you could see the cows. And then you could ask for the milk of a specific cow, even, and say, "I want Bertha's milk today. She looks happy."
I didn't make it there, but it does look beautiful. These tiles, just extravagant, colorful. I do really like this movie, Grand Budapest Hotel. And I know a lot of it was filmed in and around Görlitz. They had used that milk cafe as well as the bakery that's in the movie.
They used a couple of other places in Saxony as well, like the historic outdoor elevator in Bad Schandau, for example. They added this, but most of it was indeed shot in Görlitz. It is considered by many to be the most beautiful town of Germany because it's also the largest monument site of Germany. It has about 4,000 protected buildings in a town of only 55,000 inhabitants. And 4,000 historic building means it has 6 times more historic buildings than the famous Rotenburg ob der Tauber.
That's the thing. There's so many other Christmassy things to do in Saxony. It doesn't have to be all about the Christmas markets.
I completely agree. I even might go off on a tangent here because I recently have started promoting Christmas tours in summer. Most of the things in Saxony are also available throughout the year, as we will find out as we keep talking. So you can easily have a very much Christmas tinge tour of Saxony in other times of the year, avoiding the big crowds. Yeah.
Hey, people love Christmas all year round. Let's not beat around the bush here. There's there's Christmas stores open all year round, and they stay in business.
Absolutely. There's one in Görlitz too, quite a big one even,
Well, let's
since we
talk about
talked about
Gorlitz
Görlitz.
first then, because
Yeah.
this is like you've mentioned, just gorgeous place, really well preserved town, 55,000, so it's very manageable place. If you've seen that Grand Budapest Hotel, you've seen a lot of that, but you can get to it by rail. We spent a weekend there. So I feel like it's a good idea if you can, when it is crowded at Christmas, spend the weekend in a smaller town. The Christmas market is perfect. It's not too big, it's not too crowded. It was right on the town square there. Had a good time just soaking in the atmosphere of that unique, you can tell there's a unique feel in the air there with salation, different culture a little bit, and the beer from Landskron. I had some great beer from Landskron there.
Yeah, and there are a couple of microbreweries as well. So if you like beer, you're very well served in Görlitz. You're right, I agree with you. I lived in Görlitz for a while, and the Christmas market, of course, is different because of the fact that Görlitz was part of the Prussian province of Silesia for more than 100 years until 1945. And so after the war, when the Germans were driven out of Silesia, a lot of them settled in the small part that was left of Silesia around Görlitz. And so it is a little different. The market, it has a different feel. And of course, the setting is just beautiful. Like anything you would do in Görlitz would be beautiful just because of the setting.
Yeah, and Görlitz, it also has this unique, if you get a kick out of geography, you can literally just walk across a bridge from the town center and you're in Poland.
Yes, you can, because the town was divided by the new randomly drawn borders after the war. So the city center is on the German side, but there was some of Görlitz was on the other side of the river, and that is now developed into a Polish town called Skorzelec, yeah, which is the same name as you can tell. And they just give him a more Slavic touch, the Polish version of it. And yeah, then you're in Poland when you walk across the river. It's very easy. Funny fact here in Skorzelec, they settled a lot of Greeks after the war
Interesting.
because there were Greek communists who fled then after the civil war in Greece, and then they settled them in Skorzelec.
So you might be able to get some good Greek food in Görlitz.
I have not had that, to be honest, but I'm sure there is.
And yeah, it was just, I can't recommend Görlitz enough for a nice, relaxed weekend. I remember we went into like an antique shop. It's just a nice place.
I agree. And there are all these little boutique hotels which just have something like 15 rooms and all are different and all have Renaissance ceiling. Or Görlitz also has a great Jewish heritage and one of the few synagogues which survived the so-called Crystal Night when the Nazis burned down all the synagogues, and which is now a cultural center. And there's a hotel which has the mikvah in the basement, so you can visit the mikvah in the hotel as well.
Everybody, don't skip Gorlitz. It's a little out of the way, but it's definitely more than worth it.
What is the gap between the train and the platform?
Okay, well, I just wanted to take a second to say thanks for listening to Rails, Ales, and Old Towns. I hope you're enjoying this episode and that it's helping you get excited for your next European adventure. Be sure to check out the link in the episode description, because there you'll find all the information you need if you decide to follow up on the places and topics that came up on the show. Oh yeah, if you are digging the podcast and you had a spare minute, I'd be forever grateful if you were to leave a review or a rating on the platform you're listening on, as those little things do go a long way. And if you really want to get crazy, why not give me a follow on Instagram or Facebook at Rails, Ales, Old Towns. Back to the show.
What is the gap between the train and the platform?
Carrying on with our tour of Saxony, the Christmassy things, this is the one I think that a lot of people will have something of this in their home and they won't even realize it's from Saxony. So take us to the Ore Mountains, take us to through the history of the wooden toys and the smokers and the pyramids and, these things that we just associate with Christmas. A famous scene with these pyramids, I think a lot of people would see, if they've ever seen National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, the Griswolds, they have one of the pyramids in there.
I watch that every year, actually. It's a great movie. It never gets old. The Ore Mountains, that's, of course, a very special region of Saxony. And there you have really a Christmas which has its own character and is in a way very different from other parts of Germany. It's all connected to the mining. I mentioned that before, that this is the region that made Saxony rich through the mining. It was not only silver, that was only in the beginning. Then they found all kinds of other things, and that went all the way to even uranium mining in the 20th century for the Russians and their nuclear weapons. That was the last kind of boom period. However, it's not over yet. There's still some mines in operation, and they want to start new mines because there are things like lithium, which is now, of course, in high demand. So the mining will carry on in the Ore Mountains. However, having said that, of course, the mining came in waves. There were real booms, like cities were established within a few years, and are also now part of the World Heritage because they have grand cathedrals and walled towns and everything. But of course, in some regions, the mining declined after a while. So people had to find other ways to make a living. And we cannot help but talk about Seifen now. Seifen is a village, actually. It's on the Czech border. People call it normally a town, but it's only a village. And it's like the Christmas capital of Germany because kind of everybody's involved in making Christmas ornaments mostly these days.
It's almost like a North Pole. The people there are just always all year.
And the funny thing is that even though all year round you have these people who make the Christmas ornaments and sell them in shops, and you can go to the demonstration workshops to see how they make it, they still hold a Christmas market. Yeah, that coming back to that you can't do without a Christmas market in the end. Seifen has a very famous church. It's has 8 corners. Yeah. So it's an octagonal church, which was created after the Church of Our Lady in Dresden. That became a model for many churches. And you find that as an ornament in a lot of these wooden items, like under a candle arch, you find the Church of Seifen and some Kurrendesänger, which are singing Christmas carols, basically, and little houses. So it's a favorite motive, but it is a very cute church. It's a real recommendation of mine. Whenever you go there, any time of the year, you can do guided tours, and very often you meet the pastor of the church. who has been there for a very long time. He's also the guy who plays the organ for you and at a guided tour. And he's a very nice guy, and he has a lot of family history related to the mining and the ornaments, which he can tell you. Well, in Seifen in particular, the mining became unprofitable fairly early, and but the miners had always worked with wood because in a mine you have to work a lot with wood, and so they started creating wooden items and started selling them as well. In the beginning, it was utilitarian things like plates and spoons and stuff like that, but then they specialized on toys. So in the 19th century, toys were the big seller. For example, the biggest seller to the United States was Noah's Ark.
Okay.
Noah's Ark has all these little animals, of course, that they had to produce for the Ark. The fact that Noah's Ark was such a big seller even led to a unique profession in Seifen, the wheel turner. That's a profession that only exists in this village. That was a way to rationalize production of the animals, because instead of carving every single animal, they formed a wooden wheel, put it in the machine, which that made the wheel spin, and then while it's spinning, they carve into this wheel, and by magic, that's the only thing I can explain it. After you take the wheel out and chop it up in pieces, you already have the basic shape of the animals. Only a few people in Seifen can still do this, and it's very interesting to see. However, then things changed again, and the focus became much more on Christmas. The two most famous inventions from Seifen were the nutcracker, as we know it today. A guy called Wilhelm Fürchtner invented that. As you know, the nutcracker still cracks nuts. It's always fully functional, and you might have noticed that nutcrackers are always grim. If they're smiling, they're not from Saxony. Because everything that they created basically related to mining. And the nutcracker symbolized the authorities. Yeah. So first he created, I think, a policeman, then king, soldiers, all these classical shapes. And since they represented the authorities who basically made life for the commoners very difficult, they were very grim, because in that case they had to crack the nuts for them. They had to work for you instead of you working for them.
Okay, yeah, you're right.
Yeah. And then the counterpart to that, another invention from Seifen, is this incense smoker. That's little figurines, yeah, which you can open up. You put an incense cone in it. You get these wonderful smells because they come out of a mouth hole where there's a pipe. And these are friendly guys. They smile and everything because they symbolize the commoners. Simple but pleasant life, even though they're bothered by the authorities all the time. Interestingly enough, the nutcracker, when it was invented originally, was used as a toy. But Christmas then became more and more important, and also inventions from other parts of our mountains came in, like you mentioned, the pyramids. All relate to mining. The pyramid is like the tower of a mine, and then the candle arches, yeah, which illuminate all the windows in the Ore Mountains during the Christmas time. That symbolizes the mouth hole of a mine. And why were they important? Pyramids also have candles, which then basically propel the top part, which spins. That was because the miners worked underground where it was dark. So they spent most of their life in darkness. Then they came home in the evening, it was dark too. And it was especially hard in winter. So they were always kind of longing for light. And by putting up these candle arches in the window, they finally kind of saw the light, and they could find their way home in the darkness.
It's so cool to hear the stories of where these things came from that people are putting up in their houses all around the world. And they have just these such interesting backstories. And guess what? It happens to tie into Saxony.
And the miners also have certain traditions which are always kept alive. For example, there are miners' parades in the Christmas season. If you go to the towns of the Ore Mountains on different weekends, there are different parades. Then you can see them marching by in their traditional miners' uniforms and playing music, and a lot of people come to see that. And another tradition which I like very much is the Mettenschicht. Mettenschicht means Mette is is Christmette, which is the church service on Christmas Eve, basically. Yeah, because in Germany the focus on Christmas is Christmas Eve, not the Christmas Day. And so the Mettenschicht was the last shift of the miner before Christmas. So they would end this shift with coming together, sharing a simple meal, having a bit of schnapps, yeah, a bit of music, praying, and then they went home to their families. And this is an event that you can also kind of book. Yeah, you can be part of that. And again, can do that all year round because they also have that in other times of the year. But tradition is important. They don't call it Mettenschicht then. Then it's called something different, but it's the same thing.
So I could have it though in December, like December 10th.
Yes, you can. Yes, but these events sell out very quickly, so you have to they book that in advance. While of course for the miners parades you can just appear, but just come in time so that you get a good place where you can see it well.
And pretty much every town through the Ore Mountains will have a miners parade.
Yes,
They're playing music when they're coming through town.
they have basically marching bands, miners marching bands. So yeah, it's very entertaining, of course. The wooden items that they produced, you can buy kind of whole marching bands and miners parades if you wanted. If you want to find a mining town in the Ore Mountains, look for something that ends with Berg. Berg normally means hill or mountain in German, yeah. And but in this case, it always denotes a mining town. Altenberg, Freiberg, Annaberg, Marienberg, all places where mining took place and where towns were founded because of the mining.
You mentioned the schnapps of the miners, and when I was in Freiburg, I actually picked up a little bottle of miners schnapps, and it's a cool little bottle with a miner on top, and I still haven't opened it. I'm still holding on to it for the perfect moment. It's got to be this Christmas, I think. It's gone on too long. This Ore Mountains, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I think it's one of the coolest little areas of Germany, and it just really is special to me. But part of the reason is we were in Annaberg, Buchholz, and it was the first night of the Christmas market. It was a Friday night, late November, and we were all huddled in the town square with all the local townspeople, and it was a cold night. And literally, as soon as they turned on the big pyramid and it started spinning, no joke, it started snowing. And it snowed all night, and it just made a magical atmosphere. And I know it doesn't happen like that every night or every year, but it has just stayed with me all these years at what a special region. And then every year I read more and more about it, and it just gets me more excited to visit again.
Another interesting Christmas tradition of the Ore Mountains. Neinala is the traditional Christmas dinner in the Ore Mountains. It's dialect, Neinala, in High German kind of, we would say Neunerlei, so 9 things. And it refers to the 9 components of the meal. So you're eating 9 different things which symbolize good wishes for the new year. Yeah, for example, one part is sauerkraut. Yeah, something very German, which should give you good straw for your animals next year. And you eat lentils so that you have change next year. Yeah, and normally this is served in bowls. It varies a little depending on which place you are in. But in Annaberg Buchholz, there is a restaurant called Zum Neinerla, which is in the town hall of Annaberg, where the Christmas market is at the market square. And they serve it on a patent plate where all the 9 ingredients are all on one plate. That again, you can eat all year round. The restaurant is very nice since you earlier asked for restaurant recommendations.
Right.
So another typical Ore Mountain tradition.
So how does that differ from the one you were just telling me about? The meal, the miner's meal on Christmas Eve?
Oh, the miners' meal on Christmas Eve was very simple. They would eat, typical thing like underground. Would eat a slice of bread with lard on it, yeah, which is very popular in German, and in Germany. And they have a schnapps, and then they go home because then they would have their Christmas dinner. So that was just to come together, to eat together, because it's a very social thing to eat and drink together.
Okay, so that one's more of just a little schnapps and some bread.
Yes. But then they would go home basically and have the Neinerla.
And that one is a full feast.
That's the full feast and very nice.
Where's one other place you would recommend for just to get some of that Ore Mountains feeling?
Yeah, we had Seifen, we had Annaberg, and of course you have to also go to Freiberg. I think Freiberg is the most beautiful town in the Ore Mountains. You got your schnapps from there, and of course Freiberg is the place where it all started. Uh, there was no town there at that time. There was a village, and near that village they found the first silver. Then the Saxon ruler at the time, who was later known as Otto the Rich, after his death only, because he got rich in the process, he decided to start the mining. So he attracted miners from other parts of the German Empire to come there, and there were free people. So they could mine on their own, but they had to give a certain share to the ruler. And that's why the town was called Freiberg, free mountain or free mining place, basically. And it's a very beautiful town with a wonderful cathedral with incredible art in there. It has another interesting exhibition in the castle there, which shows minerals. It's the most beautiful minerals collection in the world. The town has wonderful old houses. Has still a large part of the wall around it, so it's very atmospheric, even outside of the Christmas season, and of course in the Christmas season because they were the first. They want to shine and have a wonderful Christmas market and miners parade too.
But also, not to harp on about the snow, but in Freiburg, they had a little wooden cutout where you can stick your head in and it looks like you're a miner.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Hmm?
It was just a dry day, and then I stuck my head in, and literally as I stuck my head in, it started snowing.
We should bring you over to Saxony every year so that we have plenty of snow for the winter.
It was just a little snow, but there's just something magical. And like when I've been on the trains, because you'll be in Dresden or you'll be in Leipzig, and you're in a city, and then you'll get on a train, and then you might have to switch, and you'll
Yeah.
switch in Chemnitz, and then slowly but surely you'll start leaving the city behind, and then your train just kind of winds up, and then all of a sudden there'll be a stream near the train, and you'll go up into these hills. They're no Alps, but they're still formidable mountains. And you just feel like you're going into a different world when you go into these Ore Mountains.
Very true. Both the train rides from Dresden to Freiberg, or let's say from Chemnitz to Annaberg, are very scenic. I also absolutely love it. Especially when you go up to Annaberg through the valley of the Flöa River, where the train goes basically along the river through the valley where it's all trees and it has a lot of charm.
What is your favorite? So, what is your favorite rail journey in Saxony that you ever take?
Well, I already mentioned two things here that I like very much because if you go to Freiberg, you pass through the Taran forest, which is the largest forest in Saxony. So it's very scenic. And the ride from Flöa to Annaberg in the Chopa Valley, I like very much. But we also have something that's very special. We have still four railroad lines which are powered by steam every day. So you can get a steam train experience.
To sum up, Saxony, you've got Stollen, wooden toys, nutcrackers, pyramids, smokers, and the incense for the smokers is made in Saxony, which just fills the house with just a great, Christmassy aroma. You got to get the authentic incense. Chocolate advent calendars were invented in Dresden, you told me.
Mhm.
Anything else Christmassy about the region we missed?
Yeah, since we're talking about chocolate, I want to mention two more things. One is the so-called domino stein or domino dice in English. That's another chocolate invention from Dresden. And it was invented in 1936. That was not the best of times from a point of economy. So this guy, Mr. Wendler, he decided to create some affordable chocolate because people couldn't buy expensive chocolate, or most people couldn't. And so he used basically cheap ingredients, a layer of dough, a layer of fruit jelly, and a layer of persipan, which was a marzipan replacement, and covered this in a thin layer of chocolate. So it was fairly cheap to manufacture. Has the form of a dice. That's why in English the term domino dice gets it best. And so that became a huge success. It's still made by the successor company today and is not protected, so it's been copied by a lot of other companies in Germany as well. So that became a big success, and especially also in the times of World War II, when there was a shortage of everything, they could still make this fairly simple product. Another product is the gingerbread from Pulsnitz. Have you been to Pulsnitz?
Have not.
Pulsnitz is a small town not far from Dresden, also in the Upper Lusatia region, like Görlitz is, kind of, but closer to Dresden. And in this town, they have been making gingerbread for a few hundred years. Yeah, and the interesting thing is that there are basically bakers, but never call them that because they say we are gingerbread makers who do nothing else than make gingerbread all year round. You can visit these bakeries. You can also go to the gingerbread museum and either bake your own gingerbread or decorate your gingerbread. Now, the funny thing is, gingerbread we associate normally with Christmas, but the gingerbread from Pulsnitz is eaten all year round. And one product stands out. And again, I'm not a big fan of gingerbread, but I love this, what they call Pulsnitzer Spitzen. It looks like a finger. Yeah, it's a finger of soft gingerbread with a layer of jelly in the middle and covered with a thin layer of chocolate. It's really delicious. And so this is eaten all year round. While the domino dice that I mentioned before was created as a cheap chocolate for all seasons, but today it's basically only eaten at Christmas.
Okay. All right. That's great. So yeah, you got gingerbread stolen. And wooden toys. Next, you're going to tell me you got peppermint sticks and rivers of eggnog and all this.
We have the oldest preserved recipe for mulled wine.
Okay, now it's getting silly. All right, Wolfgang, thank you so much for coming on and sharing the magic of Christmas in Saxony. Frohe Weihnachten.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. And I also wish you all the best for the Christmas season.